She brought the pills on a Tuesday morning with a sweet smile and a story about caring. The organizer was pink. Monday through Sunday, 7 compartments, each one filled, each one labeled in Jessica's handwriting, which was precise and decorative, the way Jessica was precise and decorative. Everything she did was designed to look a specific way. She set it on my kitchen counter beside my coffee maker, and she smiled the smile that never reached her eyes. She said, "Mom, I have been so worried about you lately. You have been so forgetful." She said I asked a doctor friend to put together a supplement regimen. Take these every morning with breakfast. They will help with memory and clarity. She touched my arm. She looked at me with those eyes that had been calculating the distance between my assets and her hands for 5 years. I said, "That is very thoughtful, Jessica. I will take them first thing." She smiled. She left. I waited until her car was gone. Then I picked up the organizer. I had spent 42 years as a pharmaceutical researcher at Kellner Pharmaceutical, not the kind who presents at conferences. The kind who does the actual bench work, the compound analysis, the meticulous daily labor of understanding what substances do to the human body at the cellular level. I retired 3 years ago. My hands still knew what they were looking at. I opened the Monday compartment. 4 pills. I turned them over in my palm. 2 were standard vitamins, B complex and vitamin D. I recognized them immediately. The other 2 were not. The third pill had a particular matte coating, a specific weight, a color that did not belong to any supplement line I had ever seen professionally. The fourth concerned me more, size and coating consistent with a class of anxiolytic that in non-therapeutic doses administered over weeks could produce significant behavioral changes, emotional instability, suggestibility, the kind of state that makes a person easier to direct, easier to convince that signing documents they would not otherwise sign was reasonable. I called my former lab partner, Dr. Patricia Wells. I described what I was looking at. She said, "Helen, the third sounds like modified release lorazepam at low dose. The fourth sounds like a haloperidol derivative. Custom compounded, not standard manufacture." I said custom. She said bring them today. I replaced all 4 pills with vitamins from my own cabinet. Same size, same color, close enough. I drove to Patricia's lab. 4 hours later, I came home with a written analysis on Kellner letterhead. Both compounds confirmed, neither prescribed, both consistent with producing in a healthy adult over 4 to 6 weeks the appearance of significant cognitive decline, confusion, memory lapses, instability, exactly the symptoms Jessica had described observing in me. I sat at my kitchen table with the report. Then I made calls. I called William Chen, my personal attorney. I told him everything. He said, "Helen, how do you want to handle this?" I said completely. "I want everything documented. I want it airtight." I called a security firm in Columbus. They came the next morning. 2 technicians. 4 hours. 12 hidden cameras installed throughout the house. Everyone connected to a private cloud server. Everyone recording in high definition with audio. Clear, complete, every angle. Then I began the performance. I am not comfortable describing what came next because it required me to become something I was not. But I understood with the precision of 42 years in a lab exactly what these compounds were designed to produce, and I produced those symptoms without them. I moved through my house as though the ground were uncertain. I reached for things and missed them. I repeated questions. I left the stove on once, carefully, briefly, and appeared not to notice until Jessica pointed it out during her daily check-in visit with the particular satisfied concern of a woman whose plan is proceeding on schedule. She visited every day. She watched. She made notes on her phone. She asked about the pills and I said yes, every morning. So helpful, dear. She brought Marcus on a Wednesday afternoon. My son, 43 years old, sitting across from me at the kitchen table, watching his wife ask his mother questions and listening to the slightly delayed responses of a woman in cognitive decline. His face was doing something complicated, not guilt exactly, the particular moral convenience of a man who wants a specific outcome and tells himself he is caring for a parent when the caring has been arranged by someone else for reasons that are not about care at all. He said, "Mom, We thought a power of attorney might be helpful. Just in case, Jessica slid a document across the table. I picked up the pen, I held it over the paper, then I set it down. I said I feel a little confused today. Can we wait? She said, of course, Mom. No rush. She said no rush, the way it is said, when there is enormous rush. 4 days later, she brought more documents. Business transfer forms, asset authorization, the paperwork that would, if signed, transfer effective control of the trust's assets into Jessica's hands under the cover of caring for an elderly woman who could no longer manage her own affairs. I held the pen each time. I delayed. Tomorrow, I said. I need to rest. On a Thursday evening, Jessica's phone rang in the kitchen. I was in the living room appearing to doze. The camera above the bookshelf caught everything. She said yes. The schedule has moved up. She is not signing. I need it done faster. Call the specialist. Tonight, if possible. We need the certificate before she changes her mind. Make sure the evaluation is thorough enough to hold up. She came to the doorway. She looked at me in the armchair. She said, Mom, I asked a wonderful doctor to come check on you. Just a routine wellness visit. I said, tonight? She said he has a very busy schedule. She said, answer his questions honestly. He just wants to make sure you are okay. I said, all right, dear. She left the room. I picked up my tablet. I texted William. 1 sentence. Tonight, 11 o'clock. Come at 10. He replied in 30 seconds. I will be there. I texted Patricia. She replied in 40. I am coming. Then I texted Roger Banks, director of the State Medical Licensing Authority, old friend from my years on institutional boards. When I had called him the day after Patricia confirmed the compounds, he had listened to everything and said, Helen, when you have what you need, call me and I will come myself. I texted Roger, tonight, 11, come at 10:45. Come quietly, he replied immediately. We will be there. William arrived at 10 through the back door with the key I had given him. He sat in the study with his laptop connected to the cloud server, watching every feed in real time. Patricia sat beside him. At 10:45, Roger arrived with 2 licensing officials and a representative from the district attorney's office. At 10:58, headlights appeared in the driveway. I was in the armchair, the position Jessica had left me in hours ago, slightly reclined, throw blanket on my lap. Half-drunk cup of tea beside me. The particular tableau of a vulnerable elderly woman at 11 at night. Jessica brought him in. He was 54 years old, expensive suit, leather briefcase, the confident energy of a man who had been paid very well for something and believed the payment made it legitimate. He said, Mrs. Calloway, my name is Dr. Martin Aldridge. I am here to help. I blinked at him slowly. He sat across from me. Clipboard, forms. The evaluation began. What day was it? Wrong day. Who was president? I named someone from 3 administrations ago. Count backward from 100 by 7s. I started correctly and stopped at 86, looking confused. My address, right street, wrong number. He wrote extensively. I could see the word patterns and the word consistent appearing. He was circling things. I watched his face while he wrote. Dr. Martin Aldridge. I had researched him the day after Jessica's kitchen phone call was captured on camera. I had known who he was for 4 days. I had sat with that knowledge and not told anyone except William because timing was everything and the right moment had not arrived. It was arriving now. He finished. He said to Jessica, who had moved into the room, I have completed my evaluation. I am comfortable providing the documentation you requested. The findings are consistent with significant cognitive decline. I will have the full report by tomorrow morning. I am recommending a conservatorship evaluation. Jessica's smile became more than its outline, still not real, but close to what was underneath it. She said, Thank you, doctor. Can we discuss next steps in the kitchen? He said, Of course. They went to the kitchen. The camera above the refrigerator caught everything. She said, Thank you, Martin. You know what this means for us. Once the conservatorship is approved and the asset transfer is complete, we can move forward. He said the transfer should move quickly with the documentation. She said, and Marcus. He said Marcus will be easier to handle once the assets are secured. She said exactly the same plan applies. She said I thought you might feel differently after all this time. He said Jessica. Some things do not change. We have been patient. She said we have been very patient. I was no longer in the armchair. I was standing in the kitchen doorway. Not the way I had been moving for 3 weeks. Not with the uncertain, slow movement of cognitive decline. With my full posture, straight, certain. The posture of a woman who had spent 42 years in a pharmaceutical lab and 17 of them as department head, and who had never walked into a room without being the most informed person in it. They turned. Dr. Aldridge looked at me the way a man looks at something that does not match the version of events he constructed. He said, "Mrs. Calloway, you should sit down." I said, "I am perfectly comfortable where I am. I have been very comfortable for 3 weeks. Despite the modified release sedative and the synthetic antipsychotic derivative that Jessica has been providing in a pink Monday through Sunday pill organizer." "Silence," Jessica said. "Ruth, you are confused." I said, "Let me tell you what I am." I walked to the living room. I picked up the remote. I turned on the projector Marcus had installed 18 months ago for the curated home theater experience, paid for by my trust. The wall screen filled with the kitchen camera feed. From 4 minutes ago, Jessica's voice, Martin's voice. Marcus will be easier to handle once the assets are secured. Some things do not change. We have been patient. Marcus was in the house. He had arrived at 10 when I texted him saying the doctor was visiting and I wanted him present. He had been in the guest room. He came into the hallway now drawn by the projector. He stood there and watched the screen. His face did what faces do when the foundation gives way. Jessica said, "Turn that off." The outline smile was gone. I said, "Jessica, I want to tell you and Dr. Aldridge something. I have known about the pills since the morning you brought them. I am a retired pharmaceutical researcher, 42 years at Kellner. I recognized both compounds before you reached the driveway. I replaced them with vitamins that same morning." Dr. Aldridge started to speak. I said, "Dr. Aldridge, I have also known who you are since the day after Jessica called you from my kitchen. You are not simply a private psychiatrist. You are Jessica's former fiancé. You ended your engagement 18 months before she married Marcus. The ending was not because the relationship ended. It was because the timing required a different arrangement. The arrangement included this house, these assets, my son." The room was very still. William stepped out of the study. Patricia behind him. The DA's representative came into the hallway. Dr. Aldridge looked at them. His confidence was losing its shape. He said, "This evaluation is valid. I have a medical license. I have authority. This will stand." I said, "Martin." He looked at me. I reached into my cardigan pocket. I took out a card. I set it on the table. State Medical Licensing Authority. My name, Dr. Helen Ruth Calloway, founding benefactor and board chairperson emeritus. I had served on the board for 6 years. I had helped establish it, helped write the licensing standards, helped design the disciplinary procedures. Stepped back 3 years ago when I retired from Kellner, but Roger Banks, the current director, was standing in my hallway right now. I said the licensing authority that governs your medical license is the same authority I helped found, the same authority whose director is in my hallway. The same authority that has been in possession of a formal complaint regarding your willingness to provide fraudulent mental competency evaluations for financial consideration since I filed it 4 days ago, along with Patricia's lab analysis and 3 weeks of cloud server footage. Roger Banks stepped into the room. He said, "Dr. Aldridge, I am Roger Banks, Director of the State Medical Licensing Authority. By the power vested in this office, I am suspending your medical license effective immediately, pending investigation. The grounds are provision of fraudulent evaluation documentation for financial gain, conspiracy to defraud, and complicity in the unauthorized administration of controlled substances." He held out his hand. Dr. Aldridge looked at his hand. He looked at me. He looked at the card with my name on it. He placed his medical license in Roger's hand. The DA's representative stepped forward. He addressed both of them. The charges were read. Unauthorized administration of controlled substances, medical fraud, conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse, attempted extortion, conspiracy to commit fraud. He read them their rights. Jessica looked at me while the handcuffs were applied. Her face had shed everything. The smile, the performance. The particular armor she had spent 5 years wearing. What was left was just a face, unperformed, a woman without her costume. They took them out. Marcus was sitting on the stairs. He had not moved since the projector. Looking at the floor, the way he had been looking at the floor for years, he said, "Mom, I looked at my son. He said I did not know. About Martin. I did not know. I said, I know you did not. He said, Mom, I let her manage everything. I looked at the floor. I said, yes, Marcus, you did. He said, what happens now? I said, tomorrow you come here at 9. I make breakfast. We sit at this table and we talk about what the past 5 years looked like from where I was standing, and we talk about what you build next, because you are 43 years old, and you are your father's son, and your father built something from nothing, and that capacity is in you. You have simply not been using it." He said, "Mom, why didn't you tell me about her from the beginning?" I said, "Marcus, I said something to your father 3 times in the first year of our marriage that he did not want to hear, about his business partner, his character, his loyalty. Your father did not listen. 4 years later, the partner did exactly what I had seen him moving toward, and your father spent a very difficult year learning his wife had been right. I said you would not have listened at the beginning. The beginning was when you loved her, or believed you did. Loving something and being wrong about it are both human. I did not judge you for either. I said I waited. I protected myself. I protected the assets. And when she handed me the pills, I was ready. He said you were never going to sign the documents. I said never. He said even without finding the pills. I said, Marcus, your father built specific protections into the trust that would have made any transfer signed under duress or impaired cognition legally void. William has been my attorney for 19 years. He had already prepared the legal response before Jessica placed the first document on this table. Even if I had been exactly who she thought I was, the documents would have failed in court. He said Dad planned for this. I said your father understood that the people who build things need to protect what they build. He said to me once, Ruth, the work does not end when the building is done. The work becomes protection. Because the things worth having are the things other people want to take. He said he was right. I said he was almost always right. Marcus left at 1 in the morning. I sat at the kitchen table alone. I had been sitting at kitchen tables alone since Robert died. The particular aloneness of a widow who has learned that absence is not emptiness, that a table can be full of the presence of the person who is not at it if you let it be. Robert was at this table. In the way that people who have shaped your life are always at the tables where the shaping happened. I reached into my cardigan pocket. I took out the 4 pills, the ones I had removed from Jessica's organizer the morning she brought it, the modified sedative, the antipsychotic derivative, the 2 that were not vitamins, the 2 that had been meant for me. I set them on the table beside Patricia's lab report. I looked at them for a long time. Small things. The way the most consequential things are often small. A compound that fits in a pink compartment. A thing handed with a smile, and a story about caring. The story does not match the pill. It never does. But you have to know what you are looking at to see the mismatch. I had known, because 42 years teaches you to look at things the way they actually are, rather than the way they are presented, to see the compound rather than the coating, to ask not what is this supposed to be, but what does this actually do? That is what 42 years teaches you. Not what things are supposed to be, what they actually do. What I want to say to every woman watching today is something my first research director told me on my first day in that lab 51 years ago. I was 22 years old, the youngest researcher in the department. He said, Helen, in this lab we have one rule. Look at what is actually in front of you. Not the label, not the description, not what someone tells you it is. What it actually is. What it actually does. He said every analysis, every conclusion, every discovery comes from that one practice. Looking at what is actually there. I have been doing that for 51 years. I looked at the pill in the pink organizer and I saw what it actually was. I looked at the smile and I saw what was behind it. I looked at the documents, and I saw what they were designed to do. I looked at my son, and I saw a man who had been looking at the floor and who was capable of looking up. If someone has ever handed you something dressed as care that was actually something else, if someone has ever managed your health or your schedule or your daily life with an attention that felt wrong in the particular way that something wrong feels when it wears the clothes of something right. Trust that feeling, not because the feeling is always correct, but because the feeling is the beginning of looking, and looking is the beginning of knowing, and knowing is the beginning of protecting yourself. Know what is in your pill. Know what is in your document. Know who is in your house. And know that the most powerful thing a woman can have is not the asset. It is the understanding of what the asset is worth to the people who want it, and the patience to wait until they show you exactly how much. And the lab report. Always have the lab report. Tell me in the comments, has someone ever handed you something dressed as care that was actually something else? Has someone ever tried to manage you? Has someone ever looked at what you built and decided it was theirs now? Tell me what you saw when you finally looked at what was actually in front of you, because I think there are women watching today holding something someone gave them, and something underneath their skin is saying the label does not match. Look at it. Really look. You already know what it is. You have always known.